From the center of the galaxy, this is ForceCenter, a show about Star Wars, pop culture, and the ultimate adventure, life itself. I'm Ken Napzok.
I'm Joseph Scrimshaw.
Jennifer Landis sends her regards, not able to join us today for our Star Wars questions. We've got questions from you in the audience, and some good ones today. Some doozies, you would say. Before we begin, as always, I want to remind you that today's podcast is brought to you by our merch shop on Fourth Wall. Check out our merch store. Pick up a t-shirt to help support the show and represent ForceCenter out in the galaxy. A t-shirt, mug, pint glass, coffee mug. I said that already. Thing to put your drinks on, coasters. They're all there. And actually, of all the merch shops we've had, Fourth Wall has been my favorite to work with. So check it out. Support the show if you can, if you want. That's something that would help the show out a lot. But also helping the show out a lot, Joseph, would be following us on social media.
That's right. And buying a mug. Anyway, yes, Blue Sky. We're trying to spend some more time on Blue Sky, getting back to posting more regularly about our shows, trying to post some fun things here and there. I like Blue Sky a lot because, hey, there's no algorithm. And it is just what you choose to see from your friends. So big advocate of Blue Sky, and we're trying to spend some more time there. So check it out. Also want to continue to highlight the website standwithminnesota.com. This is a website that was made by a woman named Ashley Fairbanks to just collect in the early days of the ICE occupation of my home state of Minnesota, to collect all of the different resources that were flying around on social media. So they're all there and organized, and different things are being added all the time. So if you want to help, and if you want to help in a specific way, this is a great place to go and take a look. Standwithminnesota.com.
Standwithminnesota.com. Still going on. I know the news cycle can kind of move past things, understandably in some ways, but it's still going on there in the Twin Cities. So
yes,
important information.
Yes. Lots of nefarious headlines about alleged de-escalation, which is not happening, I can tell you, from many, many, many eyewitnesses on the ground.
Yeah, indeed. You know, when Tom Homan's your nice guy. Anyways, all right. We're going to have some politics on the show today because that's in the questions.
Yep.
Joseph, start taking us through those questions.
Yes. So we recently posted on the good old Patreon a call for questions because we're back to doing these Q&A type shows. People put in lots and lots of great questions. Thank you to all of our patrons on Patreon. If you want to ask a question, you can join us on Patreon. So I wanted to grab these two because they were related and they were timely, and they were about processing what we're going through with a government, a national government in America with fascist intent, how to process those things via Star Wars. So yes, slightly political discussion this episode, but Star Wars discussion as well. This first question comes to us from Jedi Islander, and here's what Jedi has to say. Given the current climate, wherein a lot of us are confronting the choice to capital R rebel for the first time, we're all looking at non-violent ways to protect our friends and neighbors. What do you think of how quickly people are in the Star Wars universe to take to violence? Thinking of how Luke went from farming one day to gunning down troopers. They had it coming, says Jedi parenthetically. But even how Omega or Rey or Grogu choose violence pretty often. I think Andor may have been the most realistic about showing how violence has personal moral consequences, and that's fairly recent. Anyway, love to hear your thoughts, and stay safe. Thank you, Jedi, and we always encourage people to not just ask a question, but kind of share an essay, share a perspective of where they're coming from. And this is definitely something we've talked about before, Ken, about how Star Wars wrestles with the idea of rebellion and violence being a part of rebellion, and pushing for nonviolence first. But these are kind of different times, and I think as Jedi Islander is saying, people are making a choice. Certainly, I know from personal experience in Minnesota, people are choosing non-violent ways to protest, to protect neighbors, and to generally resist an authoritarian government. And I think that's what Jedi Islander is getting to when he says, a lot of us are confronting the choice to rebel for the first time. I think a lot of people have seen viral videos of like the dude from the suburbs who came into North Minneapolis because he got tired of sitting on his couch watching in horror of what was happening to his neighbors. And people like that are going viral because they're not the kind of people who are normally protesting. And I think that's what the spirit of this question is getting to, if I'm interpreting correctly. And I don't know if Jedi Islander is in Minnesota or Maine or any of the other places that are really directly dealing with this. It's happening in lots of places. But also just want to be very clear from all of my friends and family in Minnesota. There's a lot of creativity. There's a lot of non-violent resistance. Everything from whistles to rebel loon tattoos to there was a dildo demonstration this weekend. Treat yourself
Saw
to
that.
looking that up. Creativity, non-violence, rebelling. All right. With that out of the way, Ken, what are your big picture thoughts about what Jedi Islander is saying about Star Wars and its relationship to violence?
I guess I go back to the heart of the 80s, where I still see the original intention of this being a Saturday morning serial with some big themes behind it. So there's a lot of the pew 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 and the zoom 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 that draws you in, right? And that kind of it's so George is playing with these themes that are very real, and it wasn't until later on in our lives, at least when it found me, that was the. I saw someone making fun of this on social media this week, and I was laughing. But it was the early '90s. I give credit slash blame Clerks and some of the scenes that Kevin Smith had in there about just discussing some of the realities of Star Wars, where it became like, well, the rebels were domestic terrorists. They're blowing up the Death Star, and it was like, oh yeah, you're right. I hadn't thought about it that way. There was a point where I hadn't thought about it that way at all, because I was probably like 14, 15, 17, that range, 19, 20. Then it was fun to discuss Star Wars on that level. But so I don't know if George, starting in '77, I don't know if he ever, I don't know if this makes sense, but I don't know if he set out to be like, all right, I'm going to show the violence of rebellion. I think he just was showing just the big picture of rebellion and the big picture of what happens when democracy starts to crumble and these people only seeking their own power take over and try to hold on control. I think it was wrapped up in the nice little package that we all fell in love with. If that makes sense. Does that make sense? I'm just talking from the '80s point of view.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I very much agree with you. I think Star Wars is always going to have a tension because, in my opinion and analysis, it almost always comes back to preaching pacifism and preaching violence is an absolute last resort. And even when that last resort of violence needs to be taken, showing the damage to individual souls, showing the damage to community, showing that even when violence happens, your head needs to be on your shoulder, that even as you're engaging in it, that it's a tragedy that it got to this point and not something to be enjoyed or celebrated. I think that is the philosophy of Star Wars. But Star Wars is also pulp serial adventure. And I think there's that tension in George. And I think it's one of the things that makes him and Star Wars, I think it makes him an auteur, and I think it makes Star Wars art, because it isn't this perfect thing. It is this flawed thing where this human is pulled in different directions of, I want to tell stories of peace and pacifism. It's also fun and exciting to watch people blow stuff up. And so here, kind of enjoy the violence from a distance, but also don't engage in it in your own real life. I think there is a tension there. And I don't even mean that as like a hypocrisy. It's like, I was thinking about Jedi Islander's question about nonviolent ways. He even says, we're all looking at nonviolent ways to protect our friends and neighbors. So much of what is happening in the real world in Minnesota isn't necessarily about taking it to the fascists. It's about helping neighbors. There's nothing violent about it. It's about how can we all be observers and get people food and rent because they have to hide in their house. How can we provide legal aid? Can we chase away these men with guns by blowing whistles at them? It's all so very, very nonviolent. And Star Wars has those elements, but as viewers, we don't gravitate toward them. I mean, I think of Attack the Clones, we talked about recently. The entire plot is a politician is trying to get together a political agenda to vote down the creation of a war. And somebody tries to kill her for trying to stop the building to trying to politically use the legitimate levers of power to stop the creation of an army, to stop the escalation of violence. People want to assassinate her, so she flees on a refugee ship. There's lots
Mhm.
of non-violent philosophy, and in the Clone Wars, like the Ahsoka's, Mandalorian adventure, which is basically just sort of like, a civil liberties PSA. That's in it's about, hey, let's not deregulate too much because people will poison your tea. I mean,
Yeah.
Star Wars
Yeah.
does have stories of like, let's really talk about about non-violent issues of building community, using legitimate levers of government to talk to each other and resolve problems. But Star Wars is also an adventure fantasy, so like a lot of people aren't like, I can't wait to rewatch the "Don't deregulate your tea at the docks" episode arc
Uh,
of Mandalorian, right? Because it
yeah.
is an adventure serial. So I think there is that tension inherent in Star Wars, but Star Wars does, I think, often have its eye on we can oppose fascists by helping one another.
Yeah, and you make a great point of what's going on in the Twin Cities and other places all around our country here. That of what's the goal? The goal isn't to destroy you, federal agents. We just want to get away, and food and rent and all those kind of basic things that are still the story on the ground there. I think that's, you're right to point that out. I think I'm thinking of from early on. What's one of the first things if you watch New Hope, or New Hope is your entry point in, I'm going to the heart of our generation of Star Wars fans. Obi-Wan does not immediately pull out his lightsaber and slice off arms. He does say, "This little one's not with the trouble. Now let me get you something." It's in the philosophy. It's there. But I'm thinking, going back to when I was a kid, I had, and I don't even need to. We're not going to spin this off into a analyzing our culture as Americans, which we know is based in violence and based in a lot of bad things, man. But like as a kid, me and my friends, our favorite thing to do was to grab all of our toy guns, put on camo. I had a jacket from one of my friend's uncles who was in the Marines, and we go into my friend had a 2-acre lot. They lived on a 2-acre lot. We go into the woods and wilderness and play army, right? With no thought to anything other than pew pew pew. Or we'd sometimes play Star Wars, and we, this is why we can all laugh that, hey, no one understood "Born in the USA" wasn't a USA Yay song, because we weren't asked to analyze it. I just don't think. I think people look down on art in this kind of fashion, and we're blessed to continue to go into the pop culture world and get to go deeper. And I think George realized that a little bit. Haven't had conversations with the man in flannel about this, but I think come the prequels, all the stuff you're talking about, he's like, yeah, let's go in deep. This is why you and I can defend them so passionately now. Of like, yeah, I get it. Some of the dialogue's stiff. Padme had to escape on a refugee ship because she was assassinated for trying to stop an army. Like key point. Did you see what's going on? And we just weren't asked to engage. And I think the Clone Wars series comes along and they're able to dive in. You and I cover that in Clone Wars Report. There's just some overtly political episodes that discuss this kind of stuff here that Jedi Islanders brought up. And I think so. I look at like the Andor stuff. I look at some of the Bad Batch stuff. I think the franchise has been blessed to continue to explore the themes and now look at it in more even realistic ways than George wanted to or even could in 77, 80, and 83. It's not that he was selling toys. He's just making a big picture. He's making, creating the blockbuster genre with Steven and everyone else and having fun doing it. There's a reason Gary Kurtz, I'm glad to this day, didn't do Apocalypse Now. Like, that's what they wanted to do after American Graffiti. I'm glad they went this way because it was fun, and hopefully we can pick up the lessons.
Yeah, and I think to go back to just like the original trilogy, because there's a lot of other characters and moments that Jedi Islander brings up that I'd love to address, but just in a New Hope, Star Wars, as it was originally called in 1977, in A New Hope, Jedi Islander brings up the great point that, yeah, when we watch A New Hope, Luke goes from, aw shucks, farming to pew, 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 real quick, and does personally blow up the Death Star, and yes, does take the lives of, many, many stormtroopers and janitors, as the clerks go, joke
Just
goes.
some contractors, just some weekend contractors.
But I think A New Hope is this really interesting document that we've talked about a lot, where what's going on in the film is horrific. If you just
Hmm.
described the actual
Hmm.
events of A New Hope, it's like, okay, we meet this kid and his family is killed, and we meet this woman and she's forced to watch her entire planet destroyed, and then she's brutally tortured by, it turns out, her father, who
Hmm.
doesn't even recognize her. You go on and on with the horrors of A New Hope, but the way the story is told is in this bouncy adventure serial where we're asked to pay more attention to the life and the fun and the possibility and the banter and joy of these three characters, Han, Luke, Leia, meeting each other, then we're asked to dwell on the horror of what is happening. Um,
Yeah.
but I think immediately after A New Hope becomes this absolute blockbuster hit, the rest of the trilogy deals with Luke learning that going pew 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 on the Death Star isn't fun, and it is not a thing to be sought. Um,
Hmm.
he's
Hmm.
literally told that by his wise masters of, hey, running around on the Death Star shooting folks is not what a Jedi want.
Hmm.
Adventure, excitement. A Jedi craves not these things. I think it's an overlooked moment in Empire Strikes Back that Luke is so hungry to get into battle that he doesn't listen to Dak and slow down and wait for the next pass, and gets Dak killed because he's overly aggressive and assertive. His failure in the
Hmm.
cave on Dagobah, I think becomes really framed about Luke learning his true identity as Vader, as Vader's son, but he instigates in the cave. He brings his weapons in. He goes for the kill and sees his own face in the mask as like, hey, if all you see is weapons and death, then that's what you're going to be. You're going to be a purveyor of weapons and death. And then we get to Return of the Jedi, and he tries everything, almost to the point of comedy, uh, to rescue Han from Jabba before he resorts to violence. And even then, he goes further to realize I need to reject violence even more fully. I mean, like, so I think if you just look at A New Hope, it does look like, yeah, we're kind of being flippant about violence. But the original trilogy is Luke's entire journey with accepting violence as an absolute last resort and nothing to be craved, but to be avoided at all costs.
Excellent breakdown. Where were you in '84? We needed this to bring the text down. No, I think you're absolutely right. George and everyone involved starts wrestling right away. The DAC thing, that's great. But yeah, I've talked for a long time of growing up, never pausing for a second to realize the importance of Luke throwing down his blade. It just was this cool moment
Yeah.
that I didn't fully understand. Go hack him to death, Luke. Come on. Why is it bad that he runs off to save his friends on Dagobah? And we've had wonderful discussions here. So I think you're right. It was always present there. Always present.
Yeah.
Mm.
And then I think it's kind of continued. I'd love to talk a little bit about some of the characters that Jedi Islander brings up of
Please.
Omega, Rey, Grogu, and how much are they choosing violence? How much are they wrestling with violence? Do you have thoughts on any of those three?
Those characters, yeah. I mean, the Omega, the Omega thing, the Bad Batch stuff, I love so much because I think it absolutely wrestles with it. It's about clones untangling their identity from what they were literally made for. So it's a question of what's in their nature, but it's also a question of the galaxy at that time. What's happening is beyond conversation. It's happening in front of us, and that I think also ties into the real world. Going back to 2016, I remember having moments, and I've documented my political changings over the years. 2016, 2014, 2015, I'm going through a lot of like what I once thought is maybe not what I believe and all that kind of stuff. Then Rogue One comes out in December of 2016, and we all know what happened in November of 2016. And I saw it being used wonderfully as this rallying cry, right? Pictures of Leia, pictures of Carrie Fisher had just passed. All those things of resist, and a lot of things were showing up at the early 2017 protests. And I just remember kind of thinking, but you understand what you're calling for, right? Jin and Cassie and everyone helped start essentially was a war to make these changes. And I remember like thinking the story's real. Like it's a fantasy thing, but you're using these wonderful slogans. Like, are you prepared for that? was the
Hmm.
question. I'm not saying I was a deep thinker at the time. I just was like, oh, it's still a movie, right? Was my thought. And so I think watching Omega and Ray and Grogu kind of struggle with their natures. I mean, look at Ray. And that's part of the story you and I love. She believes she's from nowhere, has no place in the story. Not only do you have a place, you're at the center of the story, also, you have something inside you that others are trying to make you say, oh, you've got the bad powers. It's going to hurt everyone you love. And she
Hmm.
has to wrestle with what the realities of that are. And I think that's what's present in Rise of Skywalker and picking up from The Last Jedi. I know, controversial. I think they're connected, despite being, yeah, definitely different ideas between two different directors. I get that. So I think there's great. I like watching that struggle, if that makes sense, in these
Hmm.
characters because I think it needs to be. Star Wars. I don't want Star Wars to be meta and so plugged in the real world that it takes you out of the story. But there is a responsibility to me, the franchise, to know its place in the current climate,
Hmm.
um, and really deal with these stories realistically. Andor is a great example, though, as the creators will say, they're dealing with history more than present day.
Yes, but yeah, present day made some choices that the writers of Andor could not control to make
Yeah,
Andor
yeah,
even
yeah.
more relevant. Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
think I love taking a look at some of these specific characters, and I feel like yeah, Bad Batch is great because it is Omega is raised and trained by these soldiers who that's all they know how to do is be soldiers, and now they're trying to figure out how to be soldiers in a different way. But I feel like Omega changes the Bad Batch is she trains them as much as they train her because she's a child and she grew up in relative comfort on Camino, and she continues to emphasize hope and empathy and not seeing everything is a mission and we're the good guys and the bad guys need to be defeated. And I think in particular her arc with Crosshair of being certain that he is capable of change. uh I think Omega is somebody who almost she really symbolizes the even within the society of soldiers there is room to question.
Mm-hmm.
Violence is the first choice,
Mm-hmm.
and to build community. So I think there's a lot going on with Omega. I think Ray's journey with violence is just fantastic, and another reason that I think even if you kind of don't like lots of things in Rise of Skywalker, I think it's worth it taking another look at because I think what's going on with Ray is almost exactly what we're talking about. Is what is her relationship to violence? Um, I think her violence is taught from how she has to survive on Jakku.
Survival,
She
right?
has to fight to live. It is a scary, frightening place where she was orphaned, and so she has that in her. She has a lot to be angry about, and in all of Rise of Skywalker, I think, is a story of her fearing her own violence, starting with, "I'm getting mad while I train, and I threw
Mm-hmm.
this blade in anger, and I accidentally hurt BB-8.
Mm-hmm.
Ben Solo pushed me and this violence came out of me and I think it killed Chewbacca." And now all of these
Mm-hmm.
men who have things they need and want from me, Palpatine and Kylo Ren, are telling me that I am destined for violence. That's what I am. I'm a tool of violence. And then she lets her anger in. She stabs Ben and immediately regrets it and instead heals him. And we see this all throughout. She
Mm-hmm.
shows empathy for Dio. She heals the Vexus rather than cutting its head off, which would have been easier and faster. So all the while she is kind of wrestling with her own fear that her violence is something that she can never escape and is destined to, she's also acting with all this empathy and sympathy and non-violent solutions to problems. And I think the arc of it is her realizing I am capable of it and happier when I de-escalate and when I choose
Mm-hmm.
nonviolence. And even in the violent confrontation with Palpatine, it is symbolically her blocking his anger and being like, if this is all you have to put out in the world, I'm going to block it from other people and it's going to
Mm-hmm.
bounce back on you, dude. I
Mm-hmm.
think Rise of Skywalker is the story of Rey choosing community and empathy and self-sacrifice over anger and violence.
Indeed, but that still means the Citizens Fleet needs to go kick some ass in space, right? It's still
Yep.
still where we're
And,
at, and
and there's still just
yeah,
like a lot of death. So I think
yeah, yeah.
Star Wars often does, I think, have this tension of when we laser focus on an individual, we watch their journey away from violence or trying to have violence be the absolute last resort. And then sometimes the larger
Hmm.
story of a conflict or a war is a lot of big blow up and a lot of death.
Yeah,
And there is, there's no denying that.
yeah. And it's just, yeah, again, that's a bit larger conversation, I guess, of our nature as humans, a beast in every man, and it stirs when you put a sword in his heart. Like that's
Yeah.
that's just kind of my friend Patrick Keane has a great joke of Cain killing Abel, 4 people on the planet, 1/4 of them murderers. Like it's just, and it's this great bit, great classic bit. You can all search it up,
Yeah.
Patrick Keane. So it's
But
there. It's there.
I think some of those bigger acts of violence, the Death Star, the both Death Stars, this Star Killer base, the huge capital ships being taken down by the rebels, the First Order fleet or the Final Order fleet being decimated. I feel like, at least in the era of the rebellion against the Empire, that story has been so expanded, not only with Andor, but with books and comics that
Mm-hmm.
wrestle with this long, long path and how long Mothma and Bail, in particular, as leaders of
Mm-hmm.
rebellion, resist and resist and resist any violence and try all nonviolence. Try throwing sand in the
Yeah.
gears of the Senate. Try just being like, we're not going to even worry about violence. We're just going to worry about refugees and helping
Yeah.
people. Um, and then I think the figures that are like, no, there's no way out but violence are Saw and Luthen in particular. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and almost all of the storytelling with them, I think, embraces the damage that is done to their souls, the damage that is done to their
Mm-hmm.
relationships, the damage that is done to the other people around them. I think the show Andor leaves lots of room for the audience to sort of ponder all of this without making a firm judgment. But I don't think there's a reading of Andor where Luthen and Saw are just presented as like, hey, violence is great, consequence free. I think those men are
Yep.
both shown to suffer horribly, and for the people around them to suffer. And I think, uh, at least in the story of the rebellion against the Empire, I think Star Wars has taken a lot of time to wrestle with historical truths of, well, what are examples of fascist governments that only fell from violence, and what a tragedy it is, and who is lost, and what is lost and what needs to be rebuilt. I don't think it's ultimately a celebration of violence.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think at times you and I have had fun with what we have thought instead of Luthen and Saw, 2 characters we love because of the tough questions they ask in the series. And I think sometimes that's when the real world and people's ideas of their own place in the real world collides with maybe some of the truths of these characters. We're not saying that Luthen and Saw weren't part of the greater good. In fact, Luthen driving force, but like you said, the story's analyzing what it cost them. The sunshine rising the next day on Clay is both you and I share that as one of our favorite
Mm-hmm.
moments because it represents. I think I've experienced sometimes folks seeing their place in the real world and I don't know, thinking I'm undercutting them when I'm saying be careful of what Luthen's saying,
Mm-hmm.
careful what Saw's doing. I think that's part of the conversation too, which is part of this great question from Jedi Islander, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the last thing I'll say real quick about Grogu, because I think that he's a great example as well. And I think particularly in that first season, Grogu is, to me, presented as a little bit of a blank slate. He sees Din's violence and he echoes
Mm-hmm.
it by
Mm-hmm.
choking Cara Dune, but he also has the instinct to heal Grief Karga
Mm-hmm.
because somebody's in pain and I have the power to fix it. And I think he's really presented as a figure that is he Grogu is going to become who's going to become based on nurture as
Yeah.
much as nature, based on how Din is going to raise his child. And I think a lot of what's going on with Grogu after we see him train with Luke, he sees the Force as more complex than just a power you have. And that great moment in Book of Boba Fett that we celebrate of diffusing the violence and the chaos of this rampaging Rancor by soothing it rather than doing a big Force push and knocking the Rancor down, So I feel like Grogu, while we definitely do see him engage in violence, I think so much of his journey is about what is he going to learn from his dad about how to use the Force, when to use the Force. And I think as his story goes on, we see him use it. We see Grogu using it defensively a lot, removing people's weapons, blocking harm from coming to his friends. So I think Grogu is maybe another good example of the way Star Wars wrestles with violence as a last resort.
I love you bringing back season one. I think that's something worth revisiting, of just the idea of programming, it wrapped up in the ideas and themes of parenting and just your upbringing. Grogu as a blank slate, meaning both things inside. And then you and I have talked for years of the great Quill speech of the reprogramming of IG-11. I remember getting really mad at a acquaintance who was just like, why do we have to waste our time watching that? I was like, that's literally the entire point of season one. It's literally everything about season one right there, about, him turning this killer assassin droid into a nursing droid, into someone that doesn't squish the space frogs. Like it's all right there, and all kind of wonderfully realistic, wrapped up in the fantastic.
Yeah. And even Din's journey of this sort of like anything for money to protect my people. And then even being challenged by his own people of like, but maybe protecting this kid is worth breaking some of your other rules. And yeah, in his journey, which I can't wait to see continue in Mando and Grogu. Any other sort of big picture responses to Jedi Islander's great question about wrestling with Star Wars relationship with violence and nonviolence?
Yeah, nothing much more to add. I really enjoy the question. It's timely and it's timeless when it comes to Star Wars, and it's fun to even go back and challenge my own views on it, my own relationships with it, and also be entertained. Tough dance that Star Wars has to do, and all things, and it's all there. It's all there in those big properties.
Yeah, no, and I think you pull each little piece of Star Wars apart, and I respect that people can have lots of different perspectives and analysis, but for my own, I think Star Wars almost always advocates for try everything before violence. And some of the things that can be tried before violence are helping other people, community, connection, diffusing the conflict before it ever happens. But because it is a pulpy adventure serial, and that's part of the reason we like it, I'm going to cheer for a real cool lightsaber fight where my hero wins too. That is a part of what it is. And I think the stories where large-scale violence does happen, I do think that Star Wars usually takes the time to wrestle with the tragedy of that and the cost of that, and doesn't just glamorize it.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Moving on to a different but related question from Chris Williamson. This is what Chris has to say. Bright Suns, ForceCenter family. In a time when real-world politics can feel like we're stuck under a never-ending galactic empire, how do we keep turning to the dark side, and instead, how do we keep from turning to the dark side and instead find hope, joy, and rebellion through our shared love of Star Wars? Are there specific story beats or characters that inspire you and keep you on the light side of the Force? Where do you go with that one, Ken?
I guess for me, and I just shared it, part of my personal journey, I was always a good little kid. I was always good little Kenny. I wasn't a power-hungry a-hole, but I got wrapped up in a job that had some realities to it, but also had the ability to really misuse your power, force, and position. And it's really, trust me, it's really easy. It's really easy to fall into that and be surrounded by folks who have great abilities to protect, and how it can quickly sway over and to destroy in the name of protection. And Star Wars has got a bunch of folks who change, and I love these redemption stories. Maybe none more than Darth Vader. And we're on a podcast that dives in deep. We're on a podcast that says, let's take Dexter Jetster as serious as anyone's ever taken him. So I love some of the conversations about Anakin's redemption and was it earned and can you forgive him, and Star Wars, doesn't really we don't get a chance to deal with Anakin at that point. Yeah, you're absolutely right, but it's this big modern myth, man, that just shows that you always have the next choice in front of you.
Mm,
It's Han Solo. That's why I love analyzing Han. And there's understandably misreadings in how he was presented for decades as a pop culture icon, the scoundrel, the bad guy. But I love exploring the moments through Kira's eyes. I always go through Kira's eyes, and this includes the book Most Wanted, of what she means when she says you're the good guy. It is not as binary as good, bad, or good. It is what your heart is. It's what you use your position, your skills, even your plucky fly by the seat of your pants kind of approach to life, Han Solo. You use it for good, but you seem to be running away from that. And I see a lot of myself in that. I see a lot of society in that. Where there are some just normal, good functioning people who just don't seem to want to align with that and don't understand what they could do with their position and power. And I like people coming to moments of clarity. I think you and I love, and everyone loves Bad Batch. The crosshair stuff is powerful for a reason.
hmm
It is so it's somber, it's haunting at times, but he comes and he does, and it's not this. I don't think, to me, there was never this like and Crosshair gets a hero's welcome. It was this slow churning real change. And I look at those kind of moments and I still believe people could change. And I think there's times to cut them off. I think there's times where it's not your battle to change it. What Luke Skywalker saying, I can't change Kylo, knowing that, and Leia knowing that, and Han kind of having to realize, like, whoa, Luke can't do. Oh, it's me. It's me. Like there's some of those situations where I've cut people out of my life, or distanced myself because it's just like this isn't my battle. But there's other folks that I want to have conversations with, and I do believe uh, we can change, because what is the goal, right? Not even to turn it into just this out of the Star Wars world political and social conversation, but what is the goal? And I'm not just talking about winning elections. I'm talking about, isn't the goal to spread empathy? And if
hmm
someone wants their next choice is, all right, I understand empathy finally, then that's something I can work with. It's not always one to one. It's not always realistic to just open up that big tent. I get it. I get those conversations. But Star Wars has provided me so many moments of awakenings, including Cassian's. I
hmm
think him having that kind of slow churn awakening, getting to spend with that Jyn Erso. In 2016, as I mentioned, I'm going through a lot. I'm going through who do I want to be, and Jin's lines to Saw of like, it's not a problem if you don't look up. I
hmm
just remember kind of going, oh yeah, that is a problem, huh? And I've had a long life of not looking up.
hmm
Ooh, okay. So there's little moments along the way that I love. I'll get specific after I let you have your own monologue.
No, I think focusing on the idea of your next decision could always be a better one is such a great way to look at it. And I think taking things step by step. I think Lucas has in interviews referred to Anakin's redemption and his return to the light. So I get why that becomes a conversation point about
Yeah,
you know forgiveness, but I don't know that I don't know that it is. I think it's more this idea that Anakin always had it within him to make the better choice,
right.
and he finally returned to that capability. But I think yes, just celebrating at any point anybody who has been making damaging, hateful choices, who has been supporting damaging, hateful philosophies, could change. And that's a good thing to focus on rather than the next three steps of like, okay, do I invite Uncle Steve back to
Right.
family holidays? But just like first step is stop doing harm. Second
Yep.
step would be add your voice and your power to helping.
Mm.
And then down the road could be the does Uncle Steve come back to uh, the holiday dinners? Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of
Yeah.
discussion of that right now, and I think
Yep.
I do. I the other day I was taking a walk and I was, writing in my head the Star Wars story I'd like to tell that does deal with this. That does deal with not only does the person who's done a horror make the right choice, but now how do they integrate back into society? And that is a whole story that I think like Star Wars dealt with a little bit with like with Crosshair. Crosshair does some awful,
Off.
awful, awful, horrible things. Um, and I think that's the next part of the story. And with the big stories with Vader and Ben Solo, that hasn't been a part of the story, and it is a thing that people are wrestling with in real life right now. So I think that's great to bring up.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's just in terms of like not going to the dark side. That's the actual kind of specific question here, I guess. But yeah,
Hmm.
it's just seeing those characters make the choices, seeing the joy. Yeah, I love that you bring up that Ray technically uses the two blades of the twins to
Hmm.
reflect and deflect Palpatine's hate back on him. I think it's a great way to look at it in those kind of moments. Work. You have always said how you are often moved by seeing people get what they need, right? Like
Hmm.
where their needs are met, and I really understand that because that's kind of that can make me cry too, including like a squirrel getting the peanut that it needs every morning. Um, but there's a lot of moments in Star Wars too. The end of Rise of Skywalker still can get me.
Hmm.
Um, and there's we've talked about more of us and all those kind of things, but like even after the Battle of Exegol and just the celebrations, there's something about the three of the main characters kind of coming together for a bloody, sweaty, relieved hug that kind of um, reminds me that the light side, even despite the trials and tribulations and challenges, has the better ending.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think Star Wars does wrestle a lot with like anger. Anger is it's real. You can't deny it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's quicker, easier, more seductive. It's quick to join you in a fight, so it feels good. It's addictive. I think the dark side, among many other things, is an analogy for sort of getting addicted to anger, and you've lived in it so long you can't imagine not living with it. Um, but I think anger can also be shown to be uh, an instigator that it lights a fire and it makes you look up, see the
Mm-hmm.
see the flag, see the problem, and then make proactive choices. And I think the stories where I see heroes being wounded, damaged, righteously angry by the horrors that have been inflicted on them and their communities, and still find a way. Let the anger not be uh, this horrible addiction you live in and controls you, but use it as a spark to be productive and proactive. And two stories that jump to mind. One for me is the whole Kenobi show. I think Obi-Wan has trapped himself. He's haunted by the violence that he did to Anakin, that he didn't find a different solution other than kill him. Uh, and I think also that he can't get away from the frame of it was a battle and the Jedi lost. And maybe there'll be a new hope eventually, so I'll look over Luke. But and what he comes to in the series, I think, is this idea of like, you're not going to rush in with a laser sword and topple the Empire tomorrow, but that doesn't mean that you can't be a Jedi. There's lots of ways to help people. And I think within that, the existence of the path isn't fighting the Empire. The
Mm-hmm.
path is just community. It's mutual aid. It's
Mm-hmm.
taking care of some of the people who are going to be brutalized by the Empire. I
Mm-hmm.
think the arc with Riva and Kenobi, who both have reasons to be angry with one another, you know, realizing that they've both been, victimized by the dark side, by the Empire, by the Sith, and forgiving one another. The focus on the next generation. The whole Kenobi show is this picture of here are all of these people who've been horribly brutalized and damaged by the Empire, uh, finding a better path forward than just swimming in their own anger and pain.
Mm. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And the Kenobi series is it's just got this direct warmth to it
Mm-hmm.
about these what happens after the fall. That's why I love
Mm-hmm.
it so much. Mm.
Yeah. Um, I know people absolutely love Rebels, and I think Rebels is also a
Mm-hmm.
great example of
Mm.
um, the storytelling tone shifts. Sometimes it treats the Empire as, I think, especially in the early seasons, is like the stormtroopers are kind of like
Mm.
bumbling Keystone cops, so you can easily make them trip over fruit and
Mm-hmm.
win the
Mm-hmm.
day. And other times you get the more oppressive terror of the dark side. But I think
Mm-hmm.
what the picture of the rebels are like, all of these people have been brutalized by the Empire, the survivors of genocides,
Mm-hmm.
and occupations of their home planet, with Hera and Sabine being manipulated into building a weapon of mass destruction against her own people. Uh, those characters have been through absolute hell. They bond together. They become a family. Sabine uses art as a nonviolent form of resistance. Uh, Her starboard logo is being repurposed in the real world to make the Rebel Loon logo in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, their Rebels is about family. It's about art. It's about the idea of fight locally. Where are you most needed? Here on Lothal, uh,
Mm-hmm.
Ezra's home, and also this idea of building larger communities, because they're a cell, and at first they're isolated, but then they build and they build, and the trust gets larger and the family gets larger. So I think there's a lot in Rebels that is kind of a handbook to what should we value while we're facing oppression.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. One of these days, we're going to do that Star Wars Rebels rewatch podcast series that we were this close to starting, and then
Yeah.
life kind of just exploded because I think it's just, well said. Well said all around.
Any other
Mm.
specific characters or arcs or lessons for you?
I think I highlighted all of the kind of the main ones that I can remember on a Monday morning early recording session, but I just know it. I know it when I see it. I know it when I feel it a lot these
Mm-hmm.
days. I just had Night of the Seven Kingdoms is just this wonderful series, and I just had one of the biggest breakdown sobs in my couch moments with this a character that makes a choice, and it's these kind of choices of I will turn to the light side. And so when you have those moments in Star Wars, they catch on, they move me in the community things, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna have to watch that Game of Thrones show. You're making me a
You,
convert.
we'll talk off. It's it's so
Yeah.
good, so good.
Um, yeah. So the last thing I want to shout out is Nemec's manifesto. I mean, I know people have talked about
Yep,
it
yep.
a lot, but basically almost every word that Nemec says,
Yep.
including the importance of being a good model maker in
Yes.
fighting oppression.
Yep.
I want to speak a little bit about his manifesto, but I know I've been banging on about it, but I feel it's one of the moments of Andor that just became shockingly true. Of his discussion with Andor, not only about the manifesto, but about the old compass technology, the old star chart technology it's hard to learn, but it is well made and you can repair it yourself. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then Nemec says specifically, we've grown reliant on imperial tech and we've made ourselves vulnerable. There's a growing list of things we've known and forgotten, things they've pushed us to forget, things like freedom. And I think that idea of technology as a front line of oppression is so important. There are many arguments about AI, but for me, like the attempt to train people to, there's going to be a handful of different AI chat bots that are owned by one specific midlife crisis billionaire, and train people to only ever get their answer from Grok or Chat GPT. And then a man like Musk to just go in one day and say, if you ever ask Grok about the Holocaust, it's just going to say it didn't happen. That's what Nemec is talking about. That
Mm-hmm.
is that kind of thought control. And
Hmm.
AI is a fascinating technology with many applications, I'm sure, but right now in its current state, it's got Sheev Palpatine's fingerprints all over it based on who is pushing us to it, who is not allowing the consumer to say no, and why aren't they allowing the consumer to say no? So, Nemec's other manifesto about
I
technology is really speaking to me.
hmm Yeah, no, the Nevix speech is timeless, man. And whether it's used to apply to our real world or used in a montage over Star Wars clips, as it has been many times, that can kind of move you. It's one of my uh, our collective, I think, is not just Force Center, but a Star Wars fandom. It's one of our favorite moments for a good reason,
Hmm. Yeah, and
many
just
good reasons.
yeah, many good reasons, and I think the fact that it comes back at the end of Andor is this idea, this philosophy that has escaped containment. I think is a great answer to some of these questions about what are
Hmm.
nonviolent ways to resist. It feels like not enough, but ideas are powerful, and the way they travel is powerful, and they change people's minds and they change people's hearts. And I think when you watching people with guns murder people on the streets with impunity, it doesn't feel like, well, maybe if I write down an idea, like you're doing a lot. But I think that
Hmm.
is the important story in the spread of Nemec's manifesto is it is in the long run doing a lot.
Yeah, it is about hope, but it's about action, and the actions are many, right? Like
Hmm.
you and I have had conversations, and I think I've had conversation off air of like, yeah, a nice No Kings protest is fun visually and doesn't seem to move the needle, but it does. It connects. That's how grassroots community, movements grow. That's how people feel safe. They feel safer in being that guy in Minneapolis coming out and going, enough. I've been home having, whatever fine treats you always have in Minnesota that aren't in other regions. I've been having them, and enough. And I feel safe in coming out and doing it. That's why this all matters.
Hmm. Yeah, and the last thing I want to highlight about Nemec's manifesto is it has been amazing to see people express a similar sentiment. When I asked friends from Minnesota what we can do to help, there are practical things.
Mm,
Nobody that I know wants you to be generous and just not pay attention. But there's also an
right,
understanding that there are many, many different ways to resist. Um,
right.
and the parts of Nemec's manifesto that address that, and even the smallest act of insurrection pushes our lines forward.
Mm.
And know this: the day will come when all these skirmishes and battles, these moments of defiance, will have flooded the banks of the empire's authority, and then there will be one too many. One single thing will break the siege. Remember this: try. And I think what that's really getting at is, as much as we have been inundated as a culture with stories of resisting, a lot of those stories do end up with, and this small band of heroes do this one decisive thing, and they turn the
Mm-hmm.
tide. And
Mm-hmm.
so if I get up on a Tuesday and I'm exhausted and I feel so small, and what can I do about what's going on? One more social media post about it, 50 more bucks to Immigration Law Center of Minnesota. Does it feel like anything? And the answer is yes, it is. And I think Nemec's manifesto gets to that. Of course, people should, if you have it in you and you find yourself in the moment and you can make a big stand, fantastic. But the way that the authoritarianism will crumble is by constant resistance from the big to the small. So, as Nemec says, try.
Try indeed, whether it's out there at the polls or at the dinner table with your Uncle Steve. Try. Try.
Yeah.
Dude, great stuff.
All right. That's it for me. Any other thoughts from you, Ken?
Nah, I love getting to this side of Star Wars. I also, back in the day, a Star Wars Q&A meant, hey, what's your favorite color lightsaber? What planet would you live on? And the answer is green and Naboo. But I love talking about Star Wars in this way too. So thanks for these questions.
These are fantastic, and we've got a lot of great questions, like I said, on Patreon. We ask for the deep in the serious, and we ask for the silly and the fun, because Star Wars can be all those things, and we like talking about all those things. So thanks for joining us on this more in depth, more serious, more real world talk.
Yes, thank you, Jedi Islander. Thank you, Chris. And thank you to all of you watching and following us. You can follow us on social media at ForceCenter Pod. We are available as a podcast in a lot of spots. Just search. You'll find us. If we're not there, let us know. Merch is available at TeePublic still if you want to go to tpublic.com/user/ForceCenter or Fourth Wall. Links down below if you're watching on YouTube. Hey, if you're on YouTube, leave a nice comment. Like the video. Hype the video up usually within the first 5 days of release. These are things that are, often made fun of by everyone in the space for years. But unfortunately, they do matter. The future of ForceCenter is not in doubt or in question, but it's never easy. So we're just being blunt and honest here. If you can help spread the word, including hype buttons and like buttons and subscribe buttons and notification bells and comments, greatly appreciated in 2026. Patreon.com/ForceCenter is another great place to do that. Support us directly there. Get into our Discord. We are working on seeing if we can offer some, getting the workflow right for ad-free. If you're listening to the podcast and we know there's ads and that can sometimes be annoying. We get it, but we need them. We need them to survive, to be blunt. But we're analyzing the best way to make our workflows in our lives a little easier to do even more for you on Patreon, but you can support us there. Follow me at Ken Napzok. I have a weekly live show 3 times a week called The Blathering Live. Also, Casterly Talk is up and running right now. Alden Diaz and I breaking down Night of the Seven Kingdoms. I cannot recommend it enough, just beyond just what it's doing in the world of Game of Thrones. It has rather direct political connotations and commentary. So it's wonderful. Follow me there. My website is still active, KenNapzok.com. All right. Joseph, follow you. Where can they follow you?
You can find me on a lot of the social media, Blue Sky in particular. You can also visit my website, josephscrimshaw.com, for links to all the other stuff I'm doing, my blog letter, Finish Your Monsters, and the horror film I've been working on, Dead Media. It's got its first film festival appearance at the end of February at the Nevermore Film Festival in Durham, North Carolina. So if you're in that area, please come see the film. Please tell your friends about it. I will be there, and we'll be doing a Q&A after each of the 2 screenings of Dead Media. So thank you all for the support there.
There you go. Follow and support the film. We'll see you next time here on ForceCenter.